On today's video, I'm taking you guys on a journey of amateur 7-string wankery as we check out my first band's first album, Out of Time by Human Fuse. Hey there kids, it's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. I think for most all of us, our first bands will always hold a special place in our hearts, and for me that band was Human Fuse, which formed around 2002 in Knoxville, Tennessee, when I'd only been playing guitar for about a year and a half. The band originally featured myself and Mitch Trueblood on guitar, Derek Tingle on drums, and Clay Barton on bass and vocals. The band went through several different stylistic and member changes over the years, but this first batch of 6 tunes represents what was on our minds musically, which was apparently trying to prove that we could play really fast and a lot of notes. So in today's video, we're going to dig through the record and hopefully find some tasty riffs, as well as explore my humble beginnings as a bowl-cutted prog wankster. As always, this video is brought to you guys by everyone who supports my channel over on my Patreon page, patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Sign up today for all kinds of downloadable tabs, bonus lessons, and more. This week, everybody who supports my channel, even at the $1 a month level, is going to get a super extended cut of this video with even more riffs and stories and insights, as well as downloads of all 6 tracks from the record. That way you can explore them more better. So don't delay, sign up today. One more thing before we start digging into the riffs, I'm very excited to announce that I will be playing, teaching, jamming, and generally horsing around at the Woodshed Guitar Experience. This is an awesome camp here in Tennessee hosted by my main man Andy Wood, and this year it's got a pretty insane lineup of players and teachers like Eric Johnson, Andy Timmons, Mark Letary, and so many others. Be sure to check out the website down there for the entire lineup. It's kind of insane. I know it's short notice, but there's still a handful of spots available, so head on over to the website and sign up today. And at checkout, be sure to use promo code UncleBen100 for a 100 smacker discount off the total cost of the camp. Don't delay, sign up today. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Yeah, let's check out these riffs. Now that right there is some tasty Human Fuse riffage, but that wouldn't come until years on down the road. More on that later. So for today's video, I'm playing this incredible, supremely awesome Tom Anderson 7-string right here. They're kind of trying to beef up their 7-string line right now, so they loaned me this guitar here for a little while so I could check it out and give them some feedback. It's absolutely incredible, and I'm super stoked to play it for today's video because this entire record was recorded on 7 strings in standard tuning. I'm playing that through my Diesel VH2, which is being boosted with a Pepper's Pedals Dirty Tree, and I've got that running through a 212 cab under my desk here, mic'd up with the single SM57. First tune on the record is the first song that we ever wrote together, the first song I was ever a part of writing, period, and it's called The Color of the Sun. Let's check it out. Tune starts off with a little static because Dream Theater did that on 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, so why wouldn't we, right? I still like that riff. I think it's pretty cool. At the time, myself and Derek, the drummer, were super hardcore into like Dream Theater, Liquid Tension Experiment, all that proggy stuff. And you can definitely tell with riffs like these. Whenever I hear those riffs now, there's definitely a strong sense of like mom saying, you know, but we have the riffs from Glass Prison at home, honey. And that pull-offy riff right there was always kind of like my dollar store version of the riff from Acid Rain by Liquid Tension Experiment. It's still okay, I guess, but again, it just sounds really derivative to me now. And of course, it's not an epic prog metal song if you don't have like 3 solid minutes of guitar soloing, right? So here I go, shredding you along on my Line 6 AX212. That's the same amp that you saw in my videos for years and years there. That was my first like cool amp. And this solo section that follows this, oh, listen to this hilariously bad timing. That was the best take of that we got, apparently. This next section that you're going to hear is a direct rip-off of the Dream Theater Fatal Tragedy solo section with the countdown riff. So you'll hear 4 of this riff, 2, 3, 4, 4 of this riff. Next time through it's 3 and 3, 2 and 2, 1 and 1. So it's kind of this countdown guitar duel thing, although it doesn't sound like a duel, it sounds like the same guy wanking on both sides of the spectrum there. Again, direct rip-off. Dream Theater did it, so we should probably do it too, right? That's how that works. But just in case our audience wasn't certain if we could competently play our instruments yet, we decided to include a super crazy odd time signature band unison riffy section. Let's check that out. But it was really fun to write stuff like that. That's kind of the joy of prog, is that anything for any reason at any time kind of approach. And you can tell we were all just young dudes that were super stoked to be playing with other people that could, shred or whatever, so we might as well do it. And in true Dream Theater fashion, we have to make the song end with a section here that sounds like it's from the Hillsong United tune. So this is where you pass around the offering plate, put your hands in the air, and just praise the Lord for a second. It's so cheesy and cliche, but I guess it's like at least kind of chill for just a second, which is nice. You definitely don't want more shredding at this point in the song, 6.5 minutes in or whatever. So that's the proggiest song on the album. We kind of threw everything into that one, and I gotta say, I'm still pretty proud of it. Yes, it's extremely excessive, but man, this is the first song I was ever a part of writing. I'd been playing for like a year and a half. The drummer, Derek, had also just been playing for like a year and a half. So I'm gonna say that that's a pretty ambitious move to put out something like that for your first tune ever.
All right. So I guess things that I remember most about both being in the band and, recording that first EP that we did. Gosh, we were so young at the time. We set up our first rehearsal / just hang out and jam sort of session, and Ben has a famously he'll admit to, he has a famously bad sense of direction. So I ended up meeting him outside of town and just letting him follow me back to the rehearsal space. And Mitch, however, got lost, and so he never showed up.
Next up, let's move into the world of blatant plagiarism, in which we talk about the second track on the record, Shadowed, which is one of my least proud moments on the record. Check this riff out. If that sounds like the intro to the parody metal song Pain for Pleasure that Sum 41 put at the end of their All Killer No Filler album, it's because it's the exact same freaking riff, and I just imagined that I wrote it. So here's the deal. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, back in high school, she used to listen to a lot of stuff like Sum 41, and I would just tune it out because I was so far up my ass about prog metal and shreddy stuff, so I always ignored it whenever she had it on in the car. Nowadays, I realize that stuff is freaking awesome, and I love listening to it. But I remember when I wrote that riff, it came to me like a bolt of lightning in the bathtub this one night. I just heard this riff out of nowhere, and I got so excited I had to keep humming it to myself while I got out of the tub and toweled off. I went to my Tascam 4-track tape recorder because I am old as fuck. And I recorded the first guitar part, I recorded the guitar harmony part over it. I was so stoked that I think I finished the entire song that night. It's like it all just came to me at once. It became a total fan favorite whenever we'd play it live. And it wasn't until, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years of doing that somebody told me, yeah, I really like that Shadowed song. It reminds me of Sum 41. And I'm like, what are you talking about? and I went and checked out that track and realized that I was just a big old fat thief. But there are still some other riffs in the song that are pretty cool and not totally plagiarized, like the verse part that's coming up right here.
Stand inside your take, begin to corrupt everything you make. Remember when the days came into season. Swings over the expectation, I watch them all fading through. Just another childish reason.
Still like that one. It's got that big Phrygian dominant kind of energy to it. And we were all kind of into a lot of those Swedish melodic death metal bands like Soilwork, In Flames, even Children of Bodom and stuff like that. Some of that influence kind of leaked into our sound. The song also featured a wildly generic breakdown section after the chorus. I don't know, it's like Hatebreed called, they want their breakdown back. After the second chorus of the tune, we go into this harmonized arpeggio part. That was always like a highlight of our live show. Get up front with Mitch, put the feet on the monitors, and let it rip a little bit. So metal. One of the most straightforward metal things that we did on the record. I still think this solo is okay. Playing over those chord changes sort of well. Some really weak pinch harmonics in there. And again, here's this tremolo picking thing again. I don't know where that came from, because I don't remember myself doing a lot of that, but it's all over this record. Just kind of like super fast picking hand, but unsynchronized left hand. Now, this is me doing my best Jeff Loomis. In my head, this sounded like Loomis meets Marty Friedman or something. Hear that demolished arpeggio creeping into there. I don't know what that was. Bargain Store Violet. Then back to arpeggios. And the double kick spine there too. I still think that's pretty cool actually. So plagiarism aside, that one's okay. A lot more straightforward than the other stuff on the record. Nothing really too terribly proggy going on there other than the excessively long guitar solo, of course.
Our influences at the time when we recorded that were pretty varied. Ben and Derek were big into like Dream Theater and Symphony X and Liquid Tension Experiment and, you know, the progressive rock, progressive metal scene, which I personally never really got into. It wasn't really my thing. I was kind of more the metalhead, I guess you could say, of the band. I was big into Dillinger Escape Plan, Meshuggah, In Flames, Strapping Young Lad. I was really into Mastodon. So it was just kind of an interesting mix of ideas, like musically, because you had the Dream Theater guys, and then you had me, but then like I know Ben still got into a lot of the metal as well. So it was just kind of interesting how that album turned out of time.
Up next, we're going to talk about Cancun, which starts off with this cool kind of Van Halen meets Dream Theater, very Lydian sounding riff. I thought this one was pretty cool. I've always been a real sucker for that Lydian mode. It's definitely a really sappy, sentimental, corny kind of song at several points, but there's still some cool stuff going on here compositionally, like the layering of these parts Mitch and I are doing right here. And Derek's playing on this is really cool too. Definitely a lot of Mike Portnoy, kind of influence, but all the parts really suited the sections of the tunes really well. Now we get here to this verse part where we get some very, very moist Weather Channel sounding chords. Kind of sounds like what you'd write if you'd learned like 2 Dave Matthews Band songs, which I maybe have. I don't know, I guess because it had this sort of beachy vibe anyway, I was thinking when it got to the solo, it needed to sound like I was taking a little vacation at Casa del Sol, with Cloud and Tifa from Final Fantasy VII. So we have these kind of like faux Latin jazz chords going on right here. It's like a B minor 7, E7 kind of sound. Some very sappy playing by yours truly. Then it goes to E minor 7 to A7. This is the secret Carlos Santana chord progression, by the way. It's a 2-5 in any key. So now we're technically in key D. But then this section, it's like A minor 7, D7, G major 7, C major 7, 2, 5, 1, 4 in G. Honestly, I think some of the best soloing on the album. Again, for a guy that had been playing for like a year and a half, I'm not super mad at that. I like this run. I like the contour right there. Paul Gilbert lick. Following the changes decently. This last lick sucks though. It's honestly not that bad. This one sounds more like modern day me more than any of the other solos do. There's some stuff later on in here solo wise that is pretty embarrassing, and I'm gonna show it to you guys. So yeah, it's a pretty corny song overall, but I still think there's some neat stuff in there. And this is kind of drawing on the softer side of our prog influences. You know, there's bands like Dream Theater that did heavier stuff, but Derek also got me into bands like Angra and Spock's Beard and all the Arjen Lucassen stuff and all that would kind of toy with some of these, you know, softer, more progressive sounds.
Hi, how you doing? It's Clay Barton. Just wanted to thank Ben for putting all this together. It's really interesting to, you know, go back and hear and review and break these songs down. I'm just going back and thinking of these songs and all the lyrics and everything. So, you know, so young and all around the college scene and everything else. So I'm glad that a few new people are going to get to hear it. And yeah, so thanks, Ben.
Up next, we're going to check out Emerald Eyes, which has some really groovy 7-string riffage in it that I think still stands up. So what you got to remember is, like, it was really weird to go see a local band in 2003 and see dudes playing 7-string guitars. It's pretty common now, but at the time, me and Mitch were like the only dudes in Knoxville playing 7 strings. Seriously. Still like those riffs too. Those are pretty dope. Now, guitar-wise, we recorded the majority of the rhythm tracks on Mitch's RG7 621. He had one of the old Japanese ones, so we used that on everything. Stock pickups, if I'm not mistaken. And my leads I recorded on a Dillion 7-string. Now, Dillion, I don't even know if this company exists anymore, but back in the day, you could get them on eBay for like $150, so I had like 2 or 3 of them at some point. And it kind of looked like an RG with like a photo flame top, and the headstock kind of looked like a Paul Reed Smith. I want to say it was Chinese or Korean maybe. It wasn't bad. I remember it actually played pretty well and sounded good enough, so that's what I was using for the leads on this. Ooh, high notes.
Something that I think is funny is how We were all in a studio for the first time, so we didn't really know anything, right? And we single tracked the guitars, and we did it with like a dual rec, not boosted or anything. And I don't even know if Ben or myself even knew how to dial in a dual rec very well. So the guitar tone is just total mush, just like mashed potatoes. It's really bad.
As far as this album, it was the first time I was ever in a studio. I think it was everyone's. And I think we didn't quite know exactly what we were doing. We didn't have a click track. I know that, but thanks to Derek being really awesome, it wasn't really a problem.
So this riff that comes in before the chorus is okay, I guess. Little lo-fi sound. But now when I hear it, all I can hear is you like Lenny Kravitz, Are You Gonna Go My Way or something. That's what it sounds like to me. Now after that little riff, we get to the guitar solo section of the song, and I want you guys to listen to how absolutely shitty this is. This is one of the moments where when I was listening to the record for the first time in forever, I was like, oh man, that's so bad. The bends, the phrasing, everything about this sucks. I don't mind this little section. I want to say this is maybe one of the first solos I tracked. All those pinch harmonics. I thought that made me sound like Nuno Betancourt or something, but it doesn't. Those bends are awful, man, awful. So I think this is one of the first solos I recorded, and by the time we got to the end of it, I was like, oh man, I wish I had time to go back in and redo that solo. I recall not being thrilled about it. I mean, I guess some of the technique and stuff is still okay. Some of those pick runs were pretty hot. And playing through this kind of softer section, I don't know, the phrasing's just not really there. It's really weird for me, too, to go back and hear this stuff and notice that I don't have vibrato. Like, I just hadn't developed vibrato at all by this point. That's one of, like, the things about my playing I like the most now, but it just didn't exist back then. Listen how supremely shitty this tapping is. It's so weak. It just sounds like some kid who barely knows a scale and is like, as long as I stay in the scale, it's safe, right? So here it is. Here's the scale. So here's the thing. When I listened to this, I was embarrassed for myself. Myself that thought that sounded cool, and I would go out and do that live and think that it sounded really dope and stuff. But after sitting on it and reflecting on it for a while, I'm not embarrassed about it at all, because I don't sound like that anymore. And I was actually almost kind of scared, because I didn't remember how these solos and stuff went. I was kind of scared that I would go back and listen to these solos from 20 years ago and be like, oh my God, I'm still playing all the same licks. Oh my God, I peaked at 18 months of guitar playing and I never got better. I'm actually really happy to go back and listen to this stuff and think that it kind of sucks, and know that I could do so much better now, because that means I've grown as a player. So yeah, there's nothing embarrassing about looking in the rear view and thinking it sounded bad, as long as you're at a place with your playing that you feel like you've grown and changed and matured as a player.
Mashed potatoes, mashed potatoes, mashed potatoes. Looking back, the album was all over the place. Elements of prog, lots of cheesy, like soft rock, ballady type stuff. But then there are a couple tracks that are very heavy, and you can tell that Ben and I were like trying to sound like Meshuggah, but it's like we didn't quite know how to do that yet very well. But then there's also just copious amounts of just musical wankery all over the place. Lots of just tacky noodling everywhere.
Second to last track on the record is called Echo, and this is where you're going to hear our early Meshuggah influence kind of coming through a little bit. Now these days, it's really unusual to hear a metal band and them not be influenced by Meshuggah. That band influences everybody now, right? But in 2002, 2003, this is pretty cutting edge stuff to be doing things that are vaguely polymetric like Meshuggah does, like this riff. It's me and Mitch kind of playing off both sides of the mix right there. We were definitely the only guys in town that were into this band that I know of. Most everybody that we knew wasn't into them at all. direct riff of Stinga right here. Check out one of Mitch's riffs right here. I want to talk about this. Again, a little more extreme, less proggy than the other stuff that I was writing. Cool drum part too. Now again, this is us thinking we sound like Meshuggah now, because it's like choppy and odd time signature, right? I still don't mind that riff though. I don't know how Clay sang and played this.
When should I hear the sounds of vertigo? Echoing from my brain. Should I learn how to speak this time? Or just follow through your way? Why waiting? Little less from grace waiting. Coming through. Separation.
Some cool layering going on in the second verse section right here. I'm playing some kind of diminished thing down here. And Mitch is playing the next figure that's gonna come up in the song, which again is vaguely polymetric, kinda sorta.
Lost and blind.
Now let's get to the solo section of the tune right here, in which I pretend I'm Frederick Thorndendow for a second. It's like, okay. First section's all like whole tone scale. And then this section is me trying to do something like the elastic solo on Chaosphere. This is all right behind left tapping, which I thought was really cool. Again, more synthetic scale stuff. It's all that half-hold diminished. Tune wraps up with Mitch's kind of death metal-y riff here again at the end. Pretty tight.
You know, we went into the studio and there was no click tracks. You know, I'd never played the click tracks. I don't think any of us had. I don't even really remember if we did like any punch-ins on the drums. I don't think we did. I think it's all just one take, sort of the best we can get. You know, maybe ran through them a couple of times. That was really it.
Last track on the record is called Silence. It's probably the most fast and aggressive tune on the record. And when I say it's fast, I mean, boy howdy, is it ever fast. So we recorded this whole thing without a metronome. No click track on anything. I think mainly because it would have been really hard to program in all the odd time signature click tracks and stuff. It's a more complicated process back then than it would be now. So when we wrote that riff, it was really more like this speed. This one does have some of my favorite riffs on the record. Check out the second riff in the tune. God, it's so freaking fast. Love that one too. Chorus riff, one of my favorites we ever did. Halftime. Very like Castlevania changes. And I like how we use the rhythmic variations there. And then the last one is that kind of triplicate feel. Still really like that one. If I recall, all the rhythmic variations were like Derek's idea, you know? He was always trying to play around with that rhythmic vocabulary and keep stuff interesting. Still love that riff. That's one of those I always play if I'm on a 7 in B standard tuning. I always really liked Clay's vocal melody through that section too. I thought it cut through that riff very well. Now, after Human Fuse, Clay would go on to sing for a band called Suspire out of New Jersey. And they were more like a Symphony X style, you know, kind of neoclassical prog band. You can find their stuff on Spotify and listen to it. Clay sounds absolutely fantastic on that stuff. In this band, like all of us, I think he was still very much, you know, finding his voice. But by the time he got to that group, he had really honed it in, and he just sounds amazing on that stuff. It's also worth noting, too, that mega huge drummer 6'6" Samus that a lot of you guys have seen here on YouTube, he played in Suspire at the same time as Clay, which is kind of crazy. It's a very small world out there. That was an endurance test from hell right there. This is kind of a hint of where the band would go in later years. We got so much heavier and more technical and brutal. Eventually getting into what I think a lot of people would recognize as like gent, only it was 2004. And we were into Meshuggah and Killswitch Engage and was like, what if we put those things together, you know? Oh, excuse me, there's some brutality happening right now. Ooh. I still think that's a pretty cool breakdown to end the tune with, and it was definitely an inkling of the direction that would go in later when we got our second singer, Andrew Bledsoe, who was amazing. And we started doing this, like polymetric plus melodic sort of thing that I think people nowadays would recognize as being gent, but there wasn't a term for it back then. We were just into bands like Meshuggah and Killswitch and Nemic. Nemic was a really, I think, influential band for us that a lot of people don't know. MNEMIC. I think of them as the first gent band. Like, look up Mechanical Spin Phenomenon, I think was the name of the record. Check that out. Before Periphery, very influential to that sound. Very interesting stuff.
You know, we played a few shows. People seemed to enjoy what we were doing. I mean, even though we were kind of like, I mean, who knows what we were writing at that point, you know, as far as having any sort of coherency at all. You know, this thing, everything from, you know, Van Halen type riffs to, you know, crazy Dream Theater style, as many notes as we can throw into an instrumental section as we can. Writing a 6-minute long, 7-minute long, whatever prog opus, you know, at 16 and 18 years old was like, you know, what are we even doing? But, you know, oddly enough, whenever we would play, people started to like kind of gravitate to it and enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, I've got super fond memories of all of that, and it you know, the band continued on in different forms for the next 3 or 4 years, but that whole first iteration of what we were doing, you know, with Clay on vocals and bass it was just a really special time in my life.
So there you go, guys. A look at my prog metal origins with Out of Time by Human Fuse. I mean, it's super excessive and wanky at times, but I gotta say, like, we were swinging for the fences, you know? A bunch of young guys, still teenagers, most of us having played for, you know, under 2 years. It's pretty insane that we went as hard as we did. It was ambitious, I'll say that. If I'm gonna use one word to describe it, it would probably be wanky. If I was gonna use two, it'd be wanky and ambitious. We got other stuff that we recorded too with a different singer and a much different sound. Maybe one day, if you guys want to hear some of that stuff, I'll do another Riff Retrospective video about that. Just let me know if you'd like to see it in the comment section below. And don't forget, if you want to hear even more riffs and stories behind the music, be sure to sign up today to my Patreon page over at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars and check out the ultra mega extended version of this video. It's long, strong, and guaranteed to get the friction on. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, liking, subscribing, all that other stuff that us tubers ask you guys to do. It really does help those, so be sure to do all of that stuff, as well as follow me on Instagram at BenEllerGuitars. Well guys, it's been fun as always, but I think it's about time that we all got away from the internet machine and started mashing rope and creating some original tunes of our own. Let's clickin', more pickin'.
But I do want to leave with a quick story. So the last practice in, I think, March of 2008, it was a sad day. We knew we had to call it quits. We're all kind of almost wanting to go different directions musically and like with our writing and whatnot. So Ben and I are on our way home. We rode together to practice, and Ben had to have a cherry icy. Just had to have a cherry icy, like a child. So as if the day wasn't sad enough, I'm making my little stop into a gas station so Ben can have an icy. And so I'm slowing down. I have my turn indicator on, and this redneck guy in a Dodge Ram just runs right into us in my little 2001 Honda Civic, which is one of the best cars ever made. But just plowed into us. We had to sit there, wait for the police. We weren't hurt. Ben was a little sore. We were both a little sore, but Ben wanted an icy, and that happened last day of practice.